Maya Wiley is the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and the Leadership Conference Education Fund. A nationally respected civil rights attorney, Maya has been a litigator and program creator and policy advocate in philanthropy, nonprofits, government, and higher education. Prior to taking the helm of the Leadership Conference, Ms. Wiley ran for mayor of New York City in 2021, garnering the second highest number of first-choice votes in a ranked choice vote election. In 2014, she became the first Black woman to be counseled to a New York City mayor, Bill de Blasio, where she worked to protect and expand civil rights, minority and women-owned business contracts, and broadband access. Wiley became a senior vice president for social justice at the New School University, where she also founded the Digital Equity Laboratory. While there, she chaired the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board, CCRB. As chair, she led the release of the hold on proceedings against Daniel Pantaleo, whose illegal chokehold killed Eric Garner, and also co-chaired the mayor's School Diversity Advisory Group that authored 2 major reports on integrating New York City public schools. Wiley has been a litigator at the ACLU, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. She helped create a criminal justice program for a major foundation in South Africa. Wiley co-founded and led a national policy advocacy organization, the Center for Social Inclusion, now a part of Race Forward, a national policy strategy organization working to end structural racism. Wiley has received numerous awards and has been a public voice for rights, justice, and democracy through written opinion editorials and as a former legal analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. And Wiley is the author of the memoir, Remember, You Are a Wiley, which I hope you all had a chance to get earlier today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Maya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Well, I'm exceptionally embarrassed by that introduction. Because as I tell everyone, if you read that introduction, it just sounds like I can't hold down a job. But thank you, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to the students. Thank you to all of you who are here, because you are here because you are committed to transformation for the common good. And I admit to one other thing, besides my embarrassment, which is this is not a speech. It's some scribbles. I won't bore you with the scribbles. But one thing that I have learned, especially in talking to a group of people who are already actively engaged, deeply knowledgeable, and understand exactly what is at stake in this country. You don't need me to give you a speech. But I'm standing here because I was told to. So, and I thought long and hard as I moved through the day here about what would be valuable to say. And I did get some instruction, so let me give you a few examples. I'm paraphrasing. This is not the way the documents came to me. But from the center, I heard, say a little bit about yourself and your Dartmouth experience, but don't say too much. Say a little bit about, like, okay, we know the world is bad right now, but give us hope. And connect to what we've been doing for the past 10 years. And I thought, okay, that's really hard. But having been here for a day, it's also not hard. And let me say why. The common good. In your materials, you actually got the center's first publication. Is that fair, Henry? Emma is the first. And in it is a reproduction of an interview with David Brooks. And in it, David Brooks talks about the need for caring, and that the failure of the Ivy League, and I agree with much that he has said, and I disagree with some of what he's said, but I'll get there, but that the failure of the Ivy League and an ascension of Ivy League admissions is the creation of elitism. He doesn't say it quite that way, but that's really what he's talking about, right? And the sense of so many people who fall outside of the parameters of that elitism that are those of us who have benefited from an exceptional education that is far too expensive and far too hard to get for far too many people, which is absolutely true. But one of the things he talks about is the importance of education coming and bringing a sense of morality. We heard Tracy say relationship. That experiential learning is about how do we find the ability to empathize and to caring about people whose experiences are different from our own. And that is something that should not be either only accessible in the ivory tower of the Ivy League, nor is it something that we are seeing sufficiently in our society today. So I thought maybe the point was to talk about what is the cost of caring and what cost are we willing to pay for it? What is the cost of caring and what costs are we willing to pay? Why would I make that the central question? And I want to tell you a couple of stories you may know, you may not. One is a librarian in Livingston Parish, Louisiana, named Amanda Brown. Now, Amanda was a middle school librarian and someone who had taught for many years. And she heard that there was going to be a book banning discussion at the public library committee of her parish, otherwise known as a county to others of us, about books. And she decided she was going to show up and speak out against banning books. So she did. For her, it was about caring about the central importance of these precious books and the ability of anybody to have access to them. And as we know, what we have seen banned are everything from Pulitzer Prize-winning novels by Black authors, or about Latinos in baseball. Okay, I'm not making that up. Or about being gay or transgender and the personal, emotional experience of finding identity. Or many, many, many other novels that are very confusing to even understand why they're even on a list. Many of the books on these lists were books that my own two children were given to read by their teachers in elementary school, in public elementary school in Brooklyn, New York. So I knew these books. I had read them with them. They were books about connecting to the experiences of others in order to find empathy and caring. She went, she spoke out, and she paid a price for her caring, which included death threats, doxing, and all forms of defamation. She decided to bring a lawsuit, a defamation claim. She asked for $1 and an apology. It wasn't about money. She was willing to care, has paid the cost, and is continuing to speak out. The other story I'll tell you is one I've been directly connected to at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which, if you don't know, is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights coalition. I will proudly say we look like America, and we are the majority of this country with over 250 national organizations. And I would tell you, we don't agree on everything. But one of the stories that came to us were two civil rights lawyers at HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And they came to us because they were going to blow a whistle. And the whistle they did blow was a whistle that said, hey, we are career public servants. We came to do a job. The job was to assess the facts. And if those facts found that people who were threatened with domestic violence and were survivors of intimate partner abuse could not be discriminated against in getting housing. That people could not be discriminated against in using a voucher based on race, based on many income status, many factors. And what they were seeing was political appointees telling them that although they found a community in Texas that had organized with neo-Nazis in an effort to keep Black people out of the community, and they found evidence to substantiate the need for charges, they were prevented from sending those over to the Department of Justice, which was the entity that would bring that case. That was just one example. They had receipts, they had statistics, they had numbers about appointees who had decided that there would be no enforcement of civil rights laws, even though they were politically neutral decisions. And that the people who are at the other end of life-threatening situations, or just the need for a basic opportunity to have a roof over their head and a key they could call their own to open a door with their name on it, would not be protected by the US government. And they made a choice, Paul Osabere and Palmer Heenan and others, that they would come forward, write a letter, and tell the story. And when they did it, these career public servants knew full well they would probably pay the cost of their careers. And they have. They have lost their jobs for doing the job. So what cost is caring today? And what cost are we willing to pay? This is not a partisan question. This is not about agreement, nor is it about ideology. It's a simple question, and probably the hardest I have ever heard asked in my 61 years on this planet. But I also got charged with hope. So now that I've depressed you, here it comes, y'all. Because I will say this: hope is a passion for what is possible. My philosophers, and I'm quoting Soren Kierkegaard. I did not make this up. But Soren Kierkegaard is the one who defined it, I thought, properly. Hope is not of inevitability. Hope is not a promise. It is a possibility. It is the possibility of the future that we all can find ourselves in, find each other in, have relationship, be in disagreement, and still get what we need. And still be who we need to be, whatever that is. That's hope. And the reason I say these stories is I celebrate these stories of Amanda, of Paul, of Palmer. People from different parts of the country in very different roles who are saying, I will pay the price of the ticket. That's James Baldwin. The price of the ticket. I will care. I will care enough to say that I will pay the cost because I have hope. Because I'm willing to believe that my act that is based on morality, that is based on law, that is based on what's right, that is based on caring, that is based on my experience as a human being in this country about what it means to invest in its future, then I'll pay with my job. I'll lose my paycheck. I'll risk the threats and the attacks and the abuse. And they have been encircled. They have not stood alone, even though they have had to stand and face injustice. And that gives me hope. We all have different roles to play. I'm not suggesting that any of us are the Amandas or the Pauls or the Palmers. Sometimes our job is to encircle them, to lift up their stories, to be willing to stand with them and ask what they need. Sometimes it is thinking about when we just show up in our communities and say what we think and be willing to have a conversation with someone who disagrees with us. We are willing to care. I'm going to tell you a story about my experience at Dartmouth. When I was a student here and I was miserable, I'm not going to lie to you, it was a racist place. I am not going to tell you a lie right now. Todd, Crystal, they were here with me in the Afro-Am talking about, whoa, y'all. They were having fun, though. We had a good time. We're not allowed to talk about that fun right now, but we had a good time. I don't mean there wasn't joy. I don't mean there wasn't community. I don't mean there wasn't support, but there was racism, too. And I was the community employment service liaison for the Afro-Am. So anybody who wanted to recruit Black students at Dartmouth was supposed to come to me so I could set up and help get the word out to students about where they could go to the recruitment event. And the U.S. Marine Corps showed up. And with it came this man named Captain Wiley. And Captain Wiley was straight out of Central Casting for the U.S. Marine Corps. Let me just say that. He was from Tennessee. He looked like he was from Tennessee. He talked like he was from Tennessee. And he was in uniform. And I met with him, and I sat down, and I looked at him, and I said, tell me why I should tell any Black student to talk to you about going to the Marine Corps. And yes, I said it just like that. I was rude as a young person. I still am sometimes. But I meant it. I was like, I'm feeling it here at Dartmouth. I don't even know what's going to happen to folks in the Marine Corps, and I don't know who you are or what you're going to do to my friends if I tell them that they should go to the U.S. Marines. And he looked at me, and he didn't make a face. He didn't skip a beat. He didn't change anything about himself. And he looked at me and he said, I want to tell you a story about my life. And his story was this. He grew up in a rural town in Tennessee. And in that town, he joined the Ku Klux Klan. And I'm going, this story's not going well. I'm feeling fairly reinforced in my rudeness. Thank God we're in a public place. But again, he hadn't changed. He was kind, he was smart, he was interesting. And he kept rolling. He said, and that's all I knew. And I joined the Marine Corps because I didn't have any other opportunities. That was my opportunity. So I joined the Marine Corps, and then they sent me to Zaire. Okay, y'all, Congo now. We'll keep up for those youngins. Some of us are like, yeah, we know Zaire. Back then it was still Zaire. Now it's the Central Republic of the Congo. And he said, I went to Zaire, and all of a sudden, first of all, I was plopped in a group in training with a whole bunch of people who did not look like me and did not come from my town in Tennessee. And it was different. And then I get dropped in what is now the Congo. And he said, but everything I was experiencing with these people I was at boot camp with and with these people I were meeting in Central Africa was nothing like anything I was told by the people in my town. He met his wife and married her. I met her. I liked her. But my point is, he looked at me after telling me this story, and he started getting tearful. And he said, the Marine Corps saved me. It saved me. And I want everyone to have that. And I thought, when's your recruitment seminar? What room is it in? And where? And for me, it was my experiential learning. That my stereotypes, that my preconceived notions, that my walls that I had put up to protect myself from racism also meant that I was not caring. That I was unwilling to pay the cost of caring unless I was willing to accept the gift that Captain Wiley had offered me. and I did. And we stayed in touch for a number of years, actually. But he was also, and has been, and to this day is my hope. My passion for the possibility in a country right now spewing with hate, spewing with violence, spewing with an attack on the very fabric that my own ancestors sacrificed so much to give me opportunities and assumptions that they could never have. And isn't that what caring is? It's the ability to recognize that the cost does not come from the caring. The cost comes from not caring. The cost doesn't come from the price of the ticket. It comes from refusing to take the ride. I am so grateful that Dartmouth challenged me to take that ride. And with all the pain I experienced here, and there was pain, that ultimately I didn't pay a price. I was given gifts. And that's the other life lesson of experiential learning and of programs like the Center offers and creates. It's the confrontation that we are forced to make with our own assumptions and to cross terrain of deeply held fear. Sometimes that we hold legitimately, actually oftentimes. And it's the journey. Now, I will also leave you with this. So here's the thing. So there's a minister who has a little parable that I'm going to share. And that parable is got a group of people coming together because Jesus and Satan have amassed them. And Jesus is on one side of a fence, Satan is on the other. And Jesus and Satan are having their conversations with folk, trying to woo them over to their sides of the fence. And people make their choices. They choose their side of the fence. They start to walk off, one group with Jesus, and the other group with Satan. It was a smaller group, y'all. It was a smaller group. And one man sits on the fence. He just sees nobody's looking. He saddles back and he hops right on that fence. And then as the crowds have dissipated, they've walked off, but then Satan comes back looking around like he's lost something. And the man says, well, Satan, did you lose something? And he went, oh, no, there you are. Come with me. And the man says, wait. No, I didn't choose you. I sat on the fence. And he said, oh, well, I own the fence. Yeah, there's no fence, y'all. You're choosing a side when you're sitting out. I won't say choose Jesus because that would be insensitive to those who do not have my religious tradition. But I will say this. Refusing to sit on the fence comes in many forms. I don't know what form it takes for each of you. I don't always know what form it takes for me. But be willing to recognize that you will get the gift of giving when you jump off that fence and you realize where you have the opportunity to care, and that instead of paying the price, you will be gifted. And the gifts will be much greater than any cost. Thank you.